welcome all of you here for the Innovates program, exploring some of the incredible leadership and innovation in our region. And I want to begin by also thanking Sean Malone in the back, putting on the forum here this morning. We tried to do it earlier, and it was not as easy as it looks today, just showing up, and we have the panelists. It's a lot of work, a lot of prep work goes into it, and I just want to acknowledge Sean Malone for the good work that he did on this and so many other projects, so thank you. I also would like to just thank the sponsor of the wonderful event here this morning. The first is Eli Lilly. We all know is a global pharmaceutical company that, of course, has a very huge presence here in the Boston area. And in fact, it's right over at the Seaport Innovation Center that opened, I believe, in 2024. Lilly is engaged in cutting-edge research and development across the use of biomarkers to detect early signs of Alzheimer's disease. And second, a great member of the New England Council, that's John Hancock, which is, we all know, a global financial services firm that is one of the largest and most well-known providers of life insurance. John Hancock is on the front lines of early detection of disease by providing its customers with access to groundbreaking multi-cancer early detection testing. Before we dive into the program, I want to take just a quick moment to tell you a couple of other events that the New England Council has planned. Coming weeks, programs here in New England with Senator Angus King. In fact, we'll be there Monday morning in Portland, Gabe Amo in Providence, Rhode Island, Joe Courtney in Hartford, and finally, Governor Maura Healey will be speaking. These are all in the next couple of weeks. Washington, we look forward to a breakfast program in the next couple of weeks with Representative Jim Himes of Connecticut, and our Congressman Stephen Lynch will be speaking to the New England Council. And of course, registration is now open for our 2026 Washington Leaders Conference, which will take place on May 13th and 14th in our nation's capital. And we hope that you'll join us for two jam-packed days of information and programming, and opportunity for all of you to meet with members of the United States Senate, members of the United States Congress, media personalities, and members of the administration will also be a part of our two-day networking. But today we're all here to learn more about some of the incredible work underway in our region to advance the early detection of disease. And let me take a quick poll, if I can, by a show of hands. How many of you in this room have had a friend, a relative, or maybe even yourself diagnosed with some kind of cancer? And how many may have a person close to them diagnosed with Alzheimer's? Well, I think it's safe to say that today's discussion is personal for all of us. The good news is New England is home to many innovative businesses and institutions who are truly remarkable in innovative work to detect these devastating disease earlier. And early detection means early treatment, which not only saves lives, but also saves money in a time when healthcare costs continue to climb. We are fortunate that our region leaders in the United States Congress understand how important it is to continue to foster and support this innovation, and to ensure that all America has access to screening and early detection. And we truly are fortunate to be joined today by them today to deliver a keynote remark. I can't think of anyone better to give those remarks than the Honorable Jim McGovern. To introduce the Congressman, I am pleased to turn it over to one of our sponsors, a great friend to the New England Council and to me, and that's Tom Crohan, who's the Vice President and Counsel, U.S. Law and Government Relations at that wonderful company, John Hancock.
Appreciate it, Jim. Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you to all of you. Just the friendship, the partnership, the longtime membership that John Hancock shares with the council is something that we value greatly. And to Jim, to Larry, to Emily, to Sean, and the entire New England Council team, thank you for convening this important discussion. To the UMass Club, to the kitchen and the servers, thank you for hosting us. And to all of you, thank you for attending to help advance the future of early disease detection. It's my honor to introduce Congressman Jim McGovern, one of the most committed and values-driven leaders in the United States Congress. Someone who believes public service should bring people together and make life better for all our families, and whose work is grounded in the fairness, decency, and respect shaped by his Worcester upbringing and lifelong commitment to giving back. For decades, he has been a national voice in the fight to end hunger, to expand access to health care, and more recently, to advance food as medicine and early detection initiatives, including as co-sponsor of the bipartisan Medicare Multi-Cancer Early Detection Act that Jim cited, that we were excited to see become law earlier this year. A milestone we hope will serve as a model for further federal and state policies that improve survival rates and patient outcomes. So why is John Hancock engaging in this conversation? Simply put, life insurers make money by collecting premiums, investing those premiums, and eventually paying a claim. Generally, the longer a customer lives, the longer those funds stay invested, and the more the company stands to earn. On economics alone, the math tells us that life insurers have a vested interest in their customers living longer, and we are uniquely positioned to support them because our relationships span decades. And for the last 10 years, we've been leading our industry in helping our customers live longer, healthier lives by investing in prevention and early detection. You'll learn more about our approach during the panel from my colleague Lindsay, but all of us know that at its core, any effective policy or program is about making people's lives better. And that's not abstract. Like we all saw, so many of us have been affected by cancer. My family has been touched by cancer. We recently lost my sister-in-law, Carrie, to a cancer that, if detected earlier, could have been treated. It's a painful reminder of the urgency surrounding this work as it impacts real people and real families, our families. But I draw hope that the innovations we're discussing today will mean more of us get the gift of early answers, earlier detection, earlier treatment, and more time with the people we love. And that's why we're all here, with a shared belief that earlier detection is a chance to improve outcomes for families across the world. It's work that requires real leadership, partnership, and the kind of steady commitment and deep compassion embodied by our next speaker. Please join me in welcoming a dedicated public servant and champion to this cause, Congressman Jim McGovern.
Well, thank you, Tom, for the generous introduction. I can hardly wait to hear what I'm going to say after that build-up. And thank you for all you do and John Hancock does for so many people in this community. I appreciate that. And I want to thank Jim Brett and the entire New England Council for bringing us here together for this conversation. It's great to be at the UMass Club. I mean, this is incredible. It makes me want to be Marty Me when I grow up. And I'm thrilled to be here with so many leaders from across New England, people from business, medicine, research, advocacy, public policy. I think this is exactly the kind of room where big ideas from different sectors can come together and ignite change. A number of people have asked me, how are things in Washington? And it's a tough question to answer right now, to be honest with you. But about a year and a half ago, I was on a Codel and I was in India, and I had the honor of spending some time with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And it really was quite a moving experience. And he gave me these Tibetan prayer beads, which he blessed, and I wear them all the time. And he told me that they're to help with my negativity, my fear, my anxiety, and my worries. And so I'm anxious to go back to India to see His Holiness, to tell him that they don't work. I mean, these really are challenging times. The last time I was here, I think I gave remarks about robots, which was a stretch for me because I'm still getting used to bifocals. But today's topic is different. Early detection is something near and dear to me and to my family. For 23 years, my wife Lisa has served as the executive director of the Congressional Families Program at the Prevent Cancer Foundation, which is the only U.S. nonprofit organization solely dedicated to cancer prevention and early detection. Lisa's program brings together a bipartisan coalition of members of Congress, their spouses, and their families who use their platform to raise public awareness about the importance of cancer prevention and early detection. And through her work, as well as our own family's struggles with cancer, I have come to learn so much about the importance of early detection. I've also come to understand just how rapidly early detection is changing the landscape, not just for cancer, but for other diseases as well. And in many ways, we're all fortunate to have been born at a time when these incredible advances are being translated into real progress. We're lucky to live in the most scientifically advanced time in the history of the world. I would say that we're lucky to live in New England, one of the most research-rich regions anywhere in the world. And if you need proof, just look around this room. The New England institutions represented here, along with many others, are literally on the cutting edge of global research and innovation. They're developing new diagnostics to detect Alzheimer's early. New imaging analysis using AI to help clinicians detect problems that the human eye alone might miss. New blood tests that can screen for multiple cancers at once. This is extraordinary. It is extraordinary that the future of medicine is being built right here in New England, and in some cases right here in this room. But these breakthroughs do not happen in a vacuum. They don't just happen because a politician in Washington gives a nice speech, or just because a CEO in a boardroom makes a smart business decision. Progress happens because somebody funded the lab. It happens because somebody trained the researchers. It happens because somebody protected the grant money. It happens because somebody built an ecosystem of research and development and the public policy infrastructure that serves as the foundation for all of this progress. In short, we make progress when our country treats public investment in science not as a luxury, but as a necessity. And right now, America's leadership on all these metrics is being eroded, I'm sad to say. I never thought that would ever happen, and it's happening on purpose. The National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have all been threatened with massive cuts. The President's FY26 budget proposed a 50% cut to CDC and a 40% cut to NIH. Now, we were not sure until just a few weeks ago when Congress passed our full-year budget if those cuts would happen or not. And that's on top of stalling the outright cancellation of research grants that didn't align with this administration's political ideology. Nationwide, over the course of 2026, nearly 8,000 grants were canceled or suspended with the approval of the White House. And of course, this administration also chose to withdraw from the World Health Organization, a blow to our global standing with respect to research and development. So this isn't abstract to me, and it sure as hell isn't abstract to Massachusetts and New England. In FY 2025 alone, in Massachusetts, our state received about $3.4 billion in NIH grant awards. Per capita, we are the top recipient of NIH and NSF funding in the country. And because of this administration's policies, Massachusetts ended up losing about $125 million in NIH funding. And as many of us know, these are not just line items on a spreadsheet. We know this funding saves lives because we know that the work we do here in Massachusetts and throughout New England matters. It matters in the labs, in the clinics, and in the research centers all across my district, all across this state, and all across this region. It improves health outcomes. It supports the long, painstaking, often invisible work that leads to earlier detection, improved treatments, and better lives. And when we threaten to hollow out that support, as this administration has done, when we decide that medical research is somehow optional or that we can slash it now and somehow rebuild it later. We are going to pay for that recklessness in lives lost, in progress delayed, and in scientific leadership handed over to other countries for no good reason at all. And let me just say, for those of you who don't care about the scientific argument, look at the economic costs. Because the rest of the world is not waiting around for us to get our act together. When the government tries to cut funding out of the system, it disrupts clinical trials. It scares young researchers looking to build a career. And it makes it easier for other countries to poach the talent that we have trained here in this country. For the record, over 13,000 patients in Massachusetts were impacted by disruptions in clinical trials last year due to a combination of DOGE cuts and attempted funding cuts. Professors and researchers in my district have been telling me for months that they and their colleagues are being actively recruited by other countries like Canada and Germany and even China. Think about that for a second. We have some of the best and brightest minds in the world who work at some of the finest research institutions anywhere on the planet, and now, through sheer political stupidity, we are pushing them toward the exits. Now, I have never seen a country deliberately enact a policy of brain drain until this administration took over. It is absolute insanity. And the reality is, we cannot put this work on pause and expect to pick it up, in a few years from now like nothing happened. As many of us know firsthand, when we break the pipeline, we do not just lose one budget cycle. We lose years of progress, years that patients and families do not have to wait around for a cure. We have an incredible research pipeline right here in Massachusetts that I want to see supported even more by our federal government, because we are changing the world from the bench to the bedside. Right in my district, at WPI, researchers recently used artificial intelligence to analyze anatomical changes in the brain that predict Alzheimer's disease with nearly 93% accuracy. Think about what that means. Alzheimer's robs people of their memory and identity, and the possibility that researchers can use machine learning and MRI data to identify subtle changes earlier, that is revolutionary. It gives people a fighting chance to seek treatment earlier, plan earlier, and hold on to hold on a little bit longer for a cure. At UMass Chan, researchers have highlighted how MRI scans in Alzheimer's disease show degeneration very early in subcortical regions of the brain. At Mass General Brigham, investigators have been using machine learning to improve early lung cancer detection. The same story is playing out at institution after institution throughout New England. And so we are not sitting on the sidelines. We are defining the global future of early detection. We are harnessing the tools of tomorrow to detect disease today. And we're also making progress in smaller, practical steps that could make a big difference in people's lives. Recently, the FDA approved a self-swab HPV test. Now, that may sound like one modest step, but it is exactly the kind of patient-centered tool that can expand access, especially for women who face barriers to regular screening. Again, more access means early detection, and earlier detection saves lives. And in many cases, finding a problem sooner means that we have a chance to intervene with tools that are less costly and a lot more effective. We can prescribe better nutrition, more exercise, and lifestyle changes that can improve outcomes. That's one of the reasons why I've been pushing for a whole-of-government approach to embrace the idea of food as medicine. I have a bipartisan bill that would launch a pilot program to cover medically tailored meals for seniors with diet-related illnesses. It would improve outcomes and save us a boatload of money. And it dovetails perfectly with early detection. The earlier we detect chronic disease, the better our chances of reversing them, oftentimes through better nutrition. And that is what makes this topic so powerful. It's not just about technology, it's about the time. It's about giving patients more time to act, and often letting providers use tools that are less invasive, less costly, and more effective. Another example, we're seeing transformative steps when it comes to early detection, early cancer detection. Now, as many of you know, a cancer detected earlier is often treatable, sometimes curable, and almost always less devastating than one discovered too late. Over the next decade, 4.5 million American seniors will be diagnosed with late-stage cancers. In rural areas where care is often harder to access and specialists are fewer and farther between, patients face a 30% higher mortality rate. So when we talk about these cutting-edge innovations, I want us to be clear about what that actually means for real people. It's the difference between a senior living in a rural community finding out they only have a few months left to live, and a senior who gets routine lab work, catches the cancer months or maybe or years earlier, and gets treated soon enough to make a real difference. More time. That's what it's all about. And that's why multi-cancer early detection is so important, and it gives us more time. Now, some of you may be shocked to hear me say this, but Congress recently did something good on this issue. And I know I'm shocked to even say it, right? But earlier this year, we passed a landmark Medicare multi-cancer early detection law. And the law requires Medicare coverage for FDA-approved multi-cancer early detection screening tests. And that's a big deal. It's a big deal. Not only because it will save lives, though it will, not only because it has the potential to drive down health costs, though it will do that too, but because it shows that public policy can still catch up to public health and common sense. This new law didn't happen by accident. I mentioned that my wife works for the Prevent Cancer Foundation. Her organization helped rally more than 500 advocacy organizations in support of that early detection law. And through Lisa's work, I've learned that the future of cancer care is really being shaped by prevention and early detection. I've seen firsthand how this progress requires people from different sectors pulling together: researchers, patient advocates, providers, lawmakers from across the political spectrum, and the private sector leaders, including companies like Hologic and Eli Lilly, who we're about to hear from on a later panel. This kind of collaboration matters because progress on early detection should not be political, and it does not happen by accident. So what do we do next? How do we encourage progress instead of sabotaging it? First and foremost, we need to protect NIH and CDC funding. We need to do a better job of making sure our elected officials understand the value and the importance of funding these organizations. We cannot keep talking about cures and breakthroughs and prevention and American innovation while threatening to gut the very public investment that makes those things possible. I believe if we ignore these threats, it would be a moral failure and a policy failure. And years from now, people would look back and ask, what on earth were you people thinking of? Because at the end of the day, this is simple. It's about the kind of country that we want to live in. Do we want to live in a country that marvels at scientific breakthroughs but refuses to fund the science behind them? Or do we want to live in a country that is an example of what can happen when human ingenuity is supported by public policy? I think we have a moral obligation to choose the latter, to build a healthcare system and a research enterprise that gives people a fighting chance. And I think we have a moral obligation to detect disease earlier, to prevent suffering, to ensure innovation is not reserved for the lucky few, and to support those who are pushing this work forward every day. And I know it can feel like hope is in short supply. But being here and hearing about our businesses and our schools and our health institutions working together, I mean, you all give me hope. And despite the chaos in the world, we're coming together to fight for a better world. And it doesn't get much more hopeful than that. I think the example by the people in this room really is an example for the country to follow and to embrace. So I'm grateful to all of you for being part of this conversation. I know I'm kind of like preaching to the choir here, but you know what? It's good therapy for me. So I appreciate the opportunity. And I look forward to the discussion. And again, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you're doing. I'm just going to close with one personal thing. I think Jim asked at the opening how many people here have been touched by cancer, and everybody raised their hands up. Everybody had somebody in their family or they themselves have been touched by it. I mean, this impacts everybody. And as somebody who's been through a terrible ordeal, losing my daughter to this, there's nothing I wouldn't do to be able to prevent some other family from having to go through that as well. This is about families too, and we have the ability, and we have I think the ingenuity to be able to prevent that kind of suffering, and I just hope we don't blow it. So with that, thank you very much.
I just want to again thank the Congressman for his remarks. And, if I could just ask the first question, I encourage you to think of a good question for the Congressman. You mentioned the multi-cancer early detection bill that so many people supported. New England Council got on board very, very early in this bill because basically we thought it was a win-win: save lives, save money. How could anybody oppose it? But having said that, the good news was that it was part of the Medicare coverage that will be coming on board. Not shortly, unfortunately. It will not come on board until 29. And some people are a little upset that it's taken that long. We're concerned on the reimbursement and deployment of this delay might affect innovation from some of these companies. What can we do, or you do in Congress, to can we revisit that 29 date to make it much quicker?
Yeah, I think we should demonstrate as much impatience as humanly possible, and to make sure that some of your fellow researchers and fellow advocates in other states are pushing their members of Congress too. We want to make sure that CMS meets all of its deadlines and milestones. We want to make sure that CMS has the funding to be able to meet all that is required of them. We want to encourage more investments in these areas. I know that here in Massachusetts, State Representative Meg Kilcoyne has a bill that would require insurance companies to cover biomarker testing to help ensure that patients have access to the most appropriate specific treatments early on in their care. I think bills like this, will help expand the network of coverage for early detection, screening, and stuff like that. But I have to tell you, there's no substitute, for, at least on the federal level, and I think it's the same on the state level, is showing up in person and talking to your representatives and your senators to tell them to make sure all this stuff stays on track, that nothing falls behind. And the reason why these in-person visits, I think, are important, not that the letters and sign-on letters are not important, but we get a gazillion of them, right? And I read every one of them. I just want you to know, right? No, but sometimes when you're talking to somebody one-on-one, it's hard to move on to a different subject. You got to take them seriously, right? My old boss Joe Moakley used to say, he said Tip O'Neill likes to say that all politics is local. He used to say, I think all politics is personal, and it really is. And I think you need to tell our elected officials the stories and about the lives that can be impacted for the better if we make sure that we stay on all these deadlines.
Joe Moakley often said that his favorite bird was the crane.
Right.
Loved the cranes going up here in the greater Boston area. I don't know how many people read, I'm sure read, Congressman. Just recently, the Australian government has recruited some of the best and brightest scientists here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's beginning to happen in other parts of the world. We're seeing the decline in the funding of national science and NIH, and they're being offered very attractive positions in Canada and so many other parts
Look,
of the world.
I've met with researchers in Worcester who are telling me that they're being wooed by other countries. And, you know, they don't want to leave, but, you know, they remind me all the time that when you're doing research, when you're doing clinical trials, you know, when you're, you know, investigating ways to find cures and better treatments, you can't just, you know, stop it midway and say, okay, funding's not here, I'll go for 2 years with no funding and I'll pick it up 2 years later. You can't interrupt these studies. And, you know, and many of these researchers are, you know, as much as they love Worcester, right? I mean, you know, they you know, what their passion in life is about, you know, is about their science and about finding a breakthrough and about improving lives. And if you can't do it here in the United States, and another country is offering you the opportunity and a guarantee that the funding will be there, then you will go there. And again, I mentioned in my statement that China is actually trying to recruit American scientists and researchers to go to China with the promise that you will get what you need to support your research. When we find a cure to Alzheimer's, I want it to be here. I don't want to be negotiating with China about, you know, how we get access to this new miracle drug. And the same thing on all these breakthroughs on cancer. I want it to happen here. And it can happen here. And, you know, and again, many of you in this room are doing brilliant research, I mean, incredible research, you know, that if you succeed, you know, are going to save a lot of lives. I mean, we should all be excited about that and do everything we can to be wind at your back.
Questions for the congressman? Don't put, everybody put the hand up at once. Andrea.
Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, Congressman. Thanks for being here. And thanks for the work you're doing. I just wanted to touch base on SBIR reauthorization because that's coming your way. And similarly, in the name of innovation and working with early stage companies and research, that's really critical for biotechs, medtech. So just wanted to flag that for you. I believe it passed the Senate last week. And any insight on when that might be hitting the floor?
Well, we haven't been given a date yet when that may come to the floor, but I hope it does soon. I mean, that, you're right, it's incredibly important. And the president has just said he's not going to sign any more bills into law for the foreseeable future. I don't know what the hell that means, but yeah, until the SAVE Act passes, which is probably not going to pass. So at some point he's going to have to readjust his stand. But yeah, no, I mean, we need the research dollars and the support services need to be there, not just for the, you know, researchers and for the medical institutions, but for the businesses that, quite frankly, are going to take this and run with it and make it and make these things a reality. Again, this is also good for our economy. I mean, it should be. We all should want to do this because it's good for humanity and good for people. But I guess it's unfashionable to care about people now. So if you want to talk just about economic development, I mean, this is all stuff that we need to support. But we will work with you, and our delegation has your back on this.
Other questions for the congressman? Yes, ma'am. Just identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Liz McCarthy. I'm with the Alzheimer's Association, and
usually people can hear me, but thank you very much for being here and thanks for your comments. I had another side of the coin about the brain drain and the researchers. I've spoken with a lot of researchers who are really concerned about their staff, their employees, their postdocs, the people who are coming up who are immigrants, and the concern about them even being able to stay in the country. So it's a huge factor. Everyone, everywhere has so many people from other countries working in their labs, not just in neuroscience, but in every part of science. And so just to keep that in mind, it's not just, and you probably already have it in mind because you're a very thoughtful person, but it's not just our people going to other countries, which is happening, but it's people who are scared of going to work because of where they come from and what they look like.
Yeah. So I've talked to a number of researchers. We're working on a number of cases in my office about helping to extend people's visas who are doing important medical research locally here in Massachusetts. But But then there's also, you talk about Alzheimer's, I mean, there's also the issue of home care too for people. And our immigrant community, is represented in that particular area. And it really bothers me. I was at I visited a nursing home facility not too long ago in my district, and it was a beautiful place, and everybody's getting great care. And the owner said to me that a big chunk of his employees are Haitian migrants who are here under temporary protected status. Many of them have nursing degrees, and they're ideal for the work, and they're great. You pay them a good wage, everybody's happy, we want them here. But the president has just terminated their status. Now, it's under appeal in the courts. But he says, if we lose them, there's not a line of people, lined up to take their jobs. And I'm going to have to be faced with, the terrible task of saying to some of my newest residents that you can't be here anymore. It's no longer safe for you to be. We don't have the staff to accommodate you. And so the immigrant question is huge, not only in terms of brain power, in terms of researching, some of these, incredible trials that are going on right now, but in terms of serving our community. And I think we got to do a better job, which we haven't done, of reminding people of the value of our immigrant community. And I'll say I'm guilty of this too over the years. You're in forums and you're at family gatherings or you're at whatever, and people will say these disparaging things about the immigrant community, and oftentimes we kind of say, well, I don't really want to start a fight, so I'll just step back. I don't want to get in, let's not go down that road right now. And that's been a mistake, because we've allowed a stereotype to come into play that does not reflect reality. I mean, we are so reliant on the immigrant community in this country, especially in the healthcare sector. And I think most people don't understand that. I mean, I do town halls regularly. And when the questions on immigration get brought up, I don't know what the hell people are talking about. But it's not about the immigrant community here. And if we are not more aggressive in pushing back and in reminding, in particular in the business community too, and in the healthcare community, about the value of immigrants, we're going to lose this workforce, we're going to lose this brain power, and we're going to be at a disadvantage. So you're absolutely right. It's just unfortunate that we're at this point. The president said he was going to deport the worst of the worst. None of us have a problem with that. You commit a terrible crime, I don't care what your status is. I want you to be held accountable. But, denying visas to brilliant researchers or to people who are working to take care of our senior citizens or those with Alzheimer's or those with other health challenges that so they can live a quality life, it's just so self-defeating. And I'm worried about these next few months because there may be some crazy stuff that finds its way to the House floor. But I think we all have to be more vocal on this issue.
Other questions for the Congressman? Well, I just want to thank you for that upbeat assessment. Look, as kind of difficult as things are right now, I mean, I'm still hopeful. If I wasn't, I'd be moving to a tropical island somewhere, and drinking margaritas on the beach, But no, I mean, we can turn this around. It's frustrating that we have to turn things around. It's frustrating that, again, we've lost so much valuable talent in the medical research field in the last year. And it's really frustrating that we have to justify the value of investing in these things. But you got to do what you got to do. This is the right thing to do. I think most people will figure it out, and most people will get on board. But we have to fight. We have to use our voices. And I know sometimes it's uncomfortable to engage with people, but I think we have to do it. And I think for elected officials who are wobbling on this stuff, don't be a cheap date.
demand that they do what you want them to do. I mean, because quite frankly, they'll benefit from this too.
You know,
Deirdre Savage.
you bring up so many good, oh, sorry.
First of all, your personal attachment to this issue, I know, is all of us relate to and empathize with. But what's frustrating is you know, you're saying don't be shy. And there's so few. The Democratic caucus is pretty good on these issues and pretty good at standing up for the NIH cuts and the immigration issues and all of those things. There are so few that need to be flipped on the Republican side. Advice for people in this room, because I think what you've said is making it personal. It is the way to do it, but the best and most potential targets, both on the Senate side, which they're obviously you have to get 60 on some of these issues, but on the House side, who do you see as some of the best, or you don't have to say specifically, to work with on some of these issues? Because they're right central and they're so close and they should be personal, and I know it's just the speaker in some instances that are stopping.
Yeah. So let me be fair and balanced here, right? I think Democrats can do better on this issue. And I think we got to fight harder on this issue. And I think when we talk about, like, what do you stand for, this should be part of what we stand for. I mean, this is about jobs, this is about health care, this is about quality of life, you know, this is about affordability, it's about 1,000 different things. I think we need to elevate these issues more. We need to remind people of that we've already taken a hit on this stuff. And we need to be, you know, these are some of the issues you draw the line in the sand on. This needs to be one of those issues, in my opinion. On the Republican side, I think, look, I think some of the pushback has helped kind of diminish the cuts that were originally proposed by the administration. You know, I mean, Tom Cole, who's the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Republican from Oklahoma, used to be, he was my ranking member on the Rules Committee when I was chair. He gets it on this stuff. And I think deep down he's probably frustrated that we're level funding and we're not actually investing more in this stuff. But at least the draconian cuts that were being proposed originally, didn't happen. They still caused a lot of damage, but they didn't happen. That doesn't mean they can't happen in the future. But I do think telling personal stories to these Republicans and to these Democrats are really important. Look, it's important to have the numbers and the statistics and the dollar signs and how much you're going to save and how much this is going to cost and that's going to cost. Those are all very, very important things to have. But people aren't moved by that. People are moved by personal stories, and I think we have to do a better job of telling them. And I think we have to be a little bit tougher in our demands, especially, in this area, because we're not going to. We're playing catch up. We should be arguing over how much we're going to increase these budgets. And quite frankly, CBO ought to be better at scoring, investments in medical research as savings, not as a cost. Because again, if I can find a cure to something, or if I can find a way to keep you out of a hospital, we save money. If that's all that matters, you save money. But I think I think this is the moment to say this has to be a central issue, in our political discussion, in the midterms and beyond.
Well, with that, I want to thank the Congressman. We're going to take maybe a 5-minute break.
Interest from life science companies across the Granite State. Prior to launching NHLS, Andrea worked in government affairs at several life sciences companies, and early in her career, stay with me because it's pretty impressive, spent a decade on Capitol Hill working for not one, but several United States senators on a wide range of issues. Needless to say, I think you'd all agree the panel's discussion is in very, very good hands. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jim. Glad you found your folder. We were looking around. That blended into the coffee table. Thanks so much for being here. Again, my name is Andrea Hechavarria. I'm President and CEO of New Hampshire Life Sciences. I want to thank Jim, Larry, and Sean, and everyone at the New England Council for bringing this together. If you are not familiar with New Hampshire Life Sciences, we are a newly formed trade association in the state, here to represent our growing medtech and biotech sector. Boston gets a lot of attention, rightly so. It's a world-leading life sciences cluster. And because of that success, it's going right up 93. And we've seen that expansion into Worcester. We've seen it now into Lowell. And it's made southern New Hampshire really attractive. Many of you guys don't know, but our industry has been strong in New Hampshire for a long time. It's just that we've been a little bit of an asterisk in the greater Boston area. But New Hampshire is home to Novo Nordisk, Millipore-Sigma, Lonza, Novacure, and many other companies. So that's what I do in my day job. And then I'm also a co-chair of the healthcare committee here at the New England Council. And we've done a lot of important work. So I'm really happy to bring this panel up here on stage. I think the congressman did a great job teeing up what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about that MCED bill and the impact it has on early disease, on cancer, on Alzheimer's. So let's get it going. I'd like to welcome to the stage Lindsay Hansen from John Hancock, Maureen Jaffa from Eli Lilly, Jennifer Malinowski from LabCorp, and Dr. David Ryan from Mass General Brigham. We were also expecting Felicia Woods from Hologic, and some days you just can't win on air travel. She was trying to get in here last night. That plane got canceled. She tried to get the 6 a.m. out this morning. She was sitting on the tarmac. So she will likely get here either halfway through or when we're finished.
She's in a cab.
She's in a cab. Okay, so maybe she'll be coming. She'll be done again. But I wanted to set the stage for this conversation. We were talking about the multi-cancer early detection screening coverage. That just passed in February, right? And it's a landmark legislation because for the first time ever, Congress is actually doing something pretty proactive on this space because some of these tests aren't yet FDA approved. They're going through that process. So we're getting ready for it, and it's really significant. A couple things that, if you're not familiar, I just wanted to bring the conversation focused on is this is significant because right now Medicare only covers screenings for 5 specific cancers, and it's the big ones, right? It's breast, cervical, colorectal, lung, and prostate. But roughly 70% of cancer deaths occur in cancers that currently have no recommended screening, such as pancreatic, ovarian, and liver cancer. A couple other stats I think that really frame the conversation. Alzheimer's is the single most expensive disease for the U.S. government, costing Medicare and Medicaid roughly $384 billion in 2025 alone. Another just stat here to guide this on the cost, I thought this was important. Top line numbers here from the CMS Actuaries 2024 to 2033 report. Total spending, national health expenditure, is projected to reach $5.6 trillion in 2025. And climb to $8.6 trillion by 2033. Per capita cost, by 2033, we are expected to spend approximately $24,200 per person annually on healthcare, up from, this is what I thought was most stunning, $15,600 in 2024. And the GDP share, healthcare share of the U.S. economy, is projected to rise from 17.6% in 2023 to 20.3% by 2033. So this is significant, and I think we're all talking about, obviously, early disease detection helps save patient lives most importantly, but it's really going to help us as we figure out how to get our healthcare costs under control. So with that, I'd really like to get us started on this conversation. I'm going to tee up one question for each, and then when I tee it up for you, if you want to take a moment, introduce yourself, introduce your company, and what you're focused on, I think that'd be really great. So let's start with John Hancock here. I have here, John Hancock has been a strong supporter of early disease detection from both a policy perspective, but also in action, because you guys really live this with your customers and with your employees, offering early disease detection tests for employees. From your perspective, what role can preventative screening data play on a national level? And more locally, how has John Hancock's implementation of these MCED tests helped shape the company's perspective?
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for joining such an important conversation today. You've heard from my colleague Tom and others mention John Hancock and how important this is to our business. I do just want to take a moment to share why and how that's changed over time. In the spirit of talking about innovation, I can't imagine life insurance is the business that comes to mind when you think of innovation. It's not something that you would normally think of and say, gosh, isn't that an innovative business? And for us, that changed 11 years ago this coming April. So if you think of traditional life insurance, it's something that you purchase, you tuck away, and it's there for your family when you're not. And that's not something we like to talk about or think about every day. So what did we do 11 years ago? We flipped it upside down to make our life insurance something that helped our customers focus on their health. How do they improve their health? And then how do they get rewarded for that? And it's a type of shared value life insurance that we introduced to the marketplace that allows our customers to be in control, or to the very least be aware. And so we've been on this journey for about 11 years, focusing again in on customers and Americans, because we know that there's a protection gap, and we know that health is such an important aspect of overall well-being. That changed for us back in 2021, 2022, when we saw information about the Grail Gallery test that we're going to be talking about today, and a lot more in that. And so we reached out to that organization because we've always been focused on prevention. And prevention is such an important part. Things that you can do every day, physical activity, your mental well-being, sleep, you name it. All of those things are super important. But when prevention isn't enough, early detection needs to be next. And that is when we formed a partnership. We were the first life insurer to partner with Grail, and we offer it to all of our customers. And you heard Tom in his opening remarks as to why. It's not only good for customer, good for society, but that's good for us as a life insurer. And we're certainly not shy about that. And I think having that honest and transparent conversation has really been a breath of fresh air, but not only with our customers, but with our distribution partners, with our reinsurance, with policy, with government, of the like, of being able to say, this is something we're passionate about and here's why. And again, it's something that is serving across so many different areas. So, for us, it's not only something that we're passionate about and it's a part of our mission and purpose to help our customers live longer, healthier, better lives. It's something that we feel is part of our purpose in offering this type of life insurance. So I'll share just a quick story or two if I could. And you asked me to share who I was and I didn't. I'm Lindsay Hansen. I jumped right in. I get so excited. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for John Hancock. I'm also the head of our Health and Wellness Solutions business. And so we've actually established this as a part of our business, and I'm the leader of that to be able to bring this to life. So that aside, I'll now go back to just a quick story. But I shared with you, we started to offer this Grail test to our customers back in 2022, and we continue to do that today. We have had some customers share with us some of the stories that you've heard about. Again, right now, there's 5 different screenings for cancer. And the Grail Gallery test is not to replace those. It's in addition to those. And we've had customers share with us, I'll share one story with you, a gentleman by the name of Kelly King. Now, he's a gentleman. You can guess which traditional form of screenings he was not offered by his doctor. A mammogram. What type of cancer do you think the Grail Gallery test detected for him? Breast. And so it's examples like those, and Kelly shares his story, that by the time that type of cancer that started in the lymph nodes of his chest would have been detected, it would have been too late. And so the offering that he was able to get through his life insurance to want to keep him alive and want to help him stay alive and know more about his health was really, really important. We have other customers that have shared with us they've detected pancreatic cancer at stage 2. That's like winning the lottery ticket when something can be done, because pancreatic cancer does not present until it is far too late in the process of when cancer is just taking over and most likely detected at stage 4. These are the types of stories that we get to hear from our customers and why we feel so passionate about this. And so we actually, our president and CEO, Brooks Tingle, has been very, very vocal, not only with our company and our business, but also within government, of speaking multiple times last year on behalf of the bill that was just passed this year. And we could not be more excited to have this be something that has been recognized, as you said, something good that has been done within Congress to have this passed, to have that covered at 29. I liked the question of how can we accelerate that. before 29. We would love to see that. I think that was my only, in reading that the bill was passed, was that it's a few years from now, but it is a step forward and a movement that we are really, really grateful, excited, and happy to be a part of. You also asked, just very briefly, I'll share about employees. We not only offer this to customers, but it's something that we offer to our employees. The Grill Galleries has to be offered a discount to our employees. We do screening days so that employees can sign up. If they can't get to someone, we will bring someone to you. So it's not only something we bring to customer, we bring to distributors, but we also bring to our employees by way of wanting to not only encourage them, again, when prevention is enough, that early detection is there, but that we care. And it's something that we feel very passionate about from an employee perspective. So very long-winded answer, I think, for that, but hopefully, and happy to take questions as we go along the way here, but something that we're passionate about, something that's very, very important to us, and I have several other stories like Kelly's that I'd be more than happy to share that customers have shared with us that I feel as though once you hear, it'll just have an impact. Thank you.
That's amazing. And I think if you're not, I get so excited about this because I do feel the industry at large, biotech, medtech, what's going to happen in the next 10 years will trump what happened in the last 50. It's really extraordinary. And I think it's so important. Many people in this room from all different angles are working with FDA and CMS to ensure that these policies are keeping up with the speed of this innovation. As for many of you that have been following, slightly different issue, but equally important on some of the cell therapy issues, on breakthrough designations for medical technology, making sure that we're getting these through timely manner at FDA, that there's reimbursement pathways to make sure that greater patient access is available. One thing you touched on, I want to just emphasize, you guys are really leading the charge as insurers, and really that emphasizing life insurance versus health insurance, what John Hancock is doing. You want to take a minute to just elaborate on that, because I think it's so proactive what you all are doing. Very different, I think, from what was happening throughout the industry.
No, and it's a great point, and that's where, this proactive nature is something that we're proud to be a part of. It's such an important aspect to this because we know, and you cited some of the stats at the start, and we've heard so many of them, that when something is later stage or happens later, it's actually costing more. So not only are we helping that, for our customers from that prevention and that early detection, but we know that a claim would come to us sooner. Right, a claim of cancer that wasn't detected would come to us sooner as a life insurer. That would obviously hit from a health insurer perspective as well. So we have several conversations on this to say this is something that is financially beneficial, not only to us as an organization, but from a healthcare, as a whole for what it can be doing in that area. And we don't stop at Grail. We offer other early screenings to our customers. Pernuvo, for example, which is a full body MRI scan, which helps detect over 500 types of cancers or ailments from a body perspective. So we don't just stop at the one. I would encourage and call to action, and I don't know if there are health insurers in the audience today, but I would encourage you to think about how we can partner, how we can have different conversations, how we can think about more proactive versus reactive in the state of healthcare is changing from a sick care to a health care, and how can we do that, and how can we be a part of that movement versus sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to change.
Extraordinary. Let's move down to Eli Lilly, Maureen. So we are taking a moment talking about cancer. We're going to shift to Alzheimer's because Lilly has just been a world leader in this space. You want to talk through a little bit about some of the breakthroughs in biomarkers and imaging that are most promising for early Alzheimer's and that neurodegenerative disease detection, and maybe some of the legislation you're watching?
Absolutely. And thank you. You guys hear me?
You clicked on.
There we go. All right. Can you guys hear me now? Okay, great. Well, thank you to New England Council for having us here, and to all of you for taking time on your Friday morning to be here. I'm Maureen Jaffa. I sit on our neuroscience corporate affairs team. I'm based down in Washington, D.C. And as Andrea mentioned, we've been in the Alzheimer's space for over 35 years. During that time, there have been a lot of setbacks, a lot of learnings. But where we are right now is really, really exciting, right? There have been tremendous advances, not just from Lilly, but from the entire field in recent years. including the availability of the first disease-modifying therapies to actually delay disease progression in Alzheimer's. But I think what's really exciting from the biomarker perspective is the things that we're learning about how the disease progresses and about the importance of catching it early, right? We know that the pathological hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease, so those amyloid plaques, the tau tangles that develop in your brain, can develop 10, 20 years before you start to manifest the memory and thinking issues that are when people may first realize that they have a problem. So that means it's really, really important that we have ways to find patients, find the people who have these biological pathology as soon as we can. Because we see that the earlier you treat someone with Alzheimer's disease, the better the outcomes. And so that's why we've been really focused, and the whole field has been focused on how do we improve timely and accurate diagnosis. For a long time, for the last decade or so, the primary way to detect amyloid pathology is through something called an amyloid PET scan or a lumbar puncture, cerebrospinal fluid. And just, I mean, those are resource intensive, not just for physicians, but also patients, right? So in recent years, we've seen the development of blood tests. And that just is a game changer when it comes to Alzheimer's disease, right? If you can go to your doctor, get a blood test, and learn whether you have that amyloid pathology in your brain. So we're really excited about the development of those tests. Just last year, actually, FDA approved the first 2 blood tests for diagnosing amyloid pathology. And so right now, these are indicated for use in people who already have symptoms. But I think what's really exciting is, much like cancer and where people have gone with the GRAIL test and others, we're looking at, and when I say we, I mean the field as a whole, not just Lilly, but looking at how can we use these tests in people who don't yet have symptoms, right? That's where the future is going. And I think that's what we're really excited about, but then this is where the policy comes in. Because as Linda was alluding to, right, we know that unfortunately, here in the US, we do not pay for prevention, right? We're not set up to really be as proactive as I think we can be, as we could be. So Medicare does not automatically cover screening tests. And you need an act of Congress to make sure that you can have access to that. And so there is a bill that was introduced last fall called the ASAP Act. That's the Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act. I'm looking at my friends in purple here from the Alzheimer's Association who are really spearheading that. And so this would be, what's great about this is it is anticipating where the field is going. And so again, we've actually, seen Congress be proactive here and have an opportunity to give CMS the tools to actually cover these tests once they're approved by FDA, right? That's where the science is going. We're not quite there yet, but that's where we're going. And maybe one more thing I'll say that I think was alluded to, and what's great to see what John Hancock is doing, is that another barrier that's not necessarily policy driven, but really is the stigma, right, around early diagnosis. And I think a lot of times when we're talking about Alzheimer's, we say Alzheimer's is where cancer was maybe 40, 50 years ago. And I think, though, we were saying that 2 or 3 years ago, and I actually feel maybe we've cut that down to 20 years ago, because even in just the last couple of years, the conversation around Alzheimer's has shifted in terms of people being willing to talk about it, being willing to talk about their loved ones who have it, because having Alzheimer's doesn't mean you're the person in the nursing home, right? People with Alzheimer's live full, rich lives for many years before that late stage decline. So we need to continue to do work to address the stigma so that doctors have those conversations with their patients have the conversations with their physicians, so that we're not afraid to get those tests. We can get those tests, and then we can address intervention at an earlier stage when it can be more meaningful.
Yeah, this is so educational, honestly, because I think really as a patient, you have to be empowered with this type of knowledge. And so it's like for the GRAIL test, that's available now. Like, I'm gonna tell my mom and dad, like, go get this test, and just be educated on what's out there and what's coming. So it's extraordinary. Hi, Felicia. Glad you made it. That's great. All right, so let's shift down to Jennifer from LabCorp here. Kind of a two-part question, because you guys are involved in a lot of exciting things here. But can you talk a little bit about how LabCorp is leveraging these advances in genetic and biomarker testing. But also, as these things are coming online, what are some of the coverage gaps that we still need to get through? Do you want to take us through this a little bit?
Yeah, thanks so much. Jennifer Malinowski from LabCorp. I'm a Senior Director of Market Access and Medical Policy. And so thankful to the New England Council for the invitation to be here today. So thank you all. LabCorp, first of all, is the nation's largest provider of laboratory services. So I'm sure everybody's very familiar with what we provide and think about general lab testing, right? But we also do a lot of specialty testing as well. So thinking about the oncology type of testing, right? Early childhood, pediatric, rare diseases that have a genetic background, the Alzheimer's testing as well. So we really do cover the gamut of disease conditions and testing for that. And we're really excited to see what is coming from the research area, right? From our partners in pharmaceutical industry, from academic institutions, right? Like, those are amazing breakthroughs that we're seeing, not just in early cancer detection and cancer treatments, precision medicine, but also for things like Alzheimer's disease. So we do a lot of partnerships with those types of organizations to make sure that as these new drugs are coming to, getting approved and coming online, that, oftentimes sort of the linchpin for patients actually getting that test or getting that drug is having the test to say that this is the patient that's actually going to respond to that drug, right? So we really enjoy our partnerships from that perspective. And we're really excited to see all of these things come. But as you sort of mentioned, right, there are some gaps, there's some barriers that come to actually sort of moving and getting these really exciting new tests, bringing those to market. So, we really focus on what is that evidence barrier, where are those gaps that we can help provide either through, maybe through clinical trials, through partnerships with, again, our pharma or academic colleagues, to really make sure that the tests that come to market are rigorous, that they do what they say that they're going to do, and they do it very well. So we do a lot of partnerships like that. One of the other hurdles that we see, and I was happy to see that you mentioned, right, the health insurance companies, right? So we think about, coverage for some of these tests, right? Yes, the policy part, the making sure that CMS says that they'll cover it in the Medicare population, but getting our commercial health insurers on board and helping them to understand the clinical utility, right? Like, why should a patient have this test? What's it actually going to do beyond just a yes, this person has this, or no? What's the next step? And I think that's an area where there's a lot of room for opportunity still. So we're still working on that, and really excited to see when clinical trials start to read out, right? What did the physicians do with that information? Did it actually mean that it got the patient that drug that much sooner? They were able to get treatment. Did they go down a different care pathway? We're really excited about the Alzheimer's tests, and including one that is actually cleared by FDA for use in primary care, right? That's a huge game changer. If somebody who's experiencing symptoms of dementia or mild cognitive impairment can go to their primary care physician, right? That's often the first stop. And if they can get a blood test to rule out whether or not that's actually Alzheimer's pathology, is it the amyloid pathology that's driving that, or is it something else, right? So just as much as having a positive result for, say, a cancer therapy that can say, yes, you need to be on this particular drug, that's what you're going to do best on. I think it's also important to think about ruling things out, right? Like being able to say, you don't have this, and we know, but we can push you down a different care pathway, right? So I think that's areas that, we're really excited about. And I just also want to say, we focus, today on cancer and Alzheimer's, but I want to take a step back and also think about where we've been just in general with genetic testing for really rare and pediatric disorders, right? And I think we've started to come a long way. We're seeing some of that, I don't want to say necessarily early detection, but using exome sequencing in things like neonatal intensive care units to make sure that those really sick infants are getting a diagnosis sooner. You get a diagnosis sooner, you eliminate that diagnostic odyssey, they get the right treatments earlier in the process. And so it's a little different from, say a screening sort of perspective, but I think it ties very closely, and some of the barriers that we see are very similar to what we're seeing in Alzheimer's and cancer.
Yeah, it's amazing, and also just cutting down that mental game and angst of trying to figure out what's going on. You touched on some of the policy related to health insurance. I think it's just important to note that while we're kind of in this new paradigm shift on how Congress and FDA and CMS are looking at these just incredible innovations coming forward, but it's almost like it's a conversation with health insurers too, because I think everyone's been talking about value-based care for I feel like 20 years. We're all in this value-based care discussion, but we're still going forward in that. And I think there's another paradigm shift that needs to happen in health insurers is how are we looking at this proactively, right? I mean, just a personal story, my husband has a heart condition, fairly common, but for his age, traditional heart screenings aren't going to pick up what like plaques and certain things. So we had to kind of fight tooth and nail to get this additional screening. And it just, it takes a lot of effort. And I think you could go down that path and realize that for a run-of-the-mill person, are they going to spend all that money, spend all that time, go through that to fight that? So we really, there's another part of this conversation that also needs to happen to make sure that these things are accessible. And you can say that about the cell therapies coming on, all these things. It's just all ripe for the picking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that we really rely on partners and guideline producing bodies. So I'm thinking about the Alzheimer's Association, right? I'm also a certified guideline developer. I've done that did that for a number of years before joining LabCorp. So I understand, right, the evidence basis that has to go into creating a guideline and making sure that those guidelines get updated regularly, right? I think that's part of the puzzle piece that we need to help health insurers sort of change their coverage policies or evolve them maybe more rapidly as well.
Yeah, so interesting. Mass General Brigham's here, which is very exciting as this global leading research hospital. Dr. Ryan, you have a lot, there's a lot going on at MGB, always in this space, but kind of wanted to touch base with you on when we chatted, you had mentioned there's really 3 main focus areas you guys are looking at in early disease detection. You had talked about deep learning, machine learning, how that's helping. I think that was even mentioned by the congressman. What's going on in terms of, diagnostic, guiding the patient through that process, just as Jennifer mentioned. So talk to us a little bit about some of the work you're doing at Mass General.
So thanks for having us. So I'm Dave Ryan, and I'm a pancreatic cancer expert. So I take care of folks with pancreatic cancer, and now I'm the president of the Mass General Brigham Cancer Institute. So we're organizing the cancer delivery across the city for Mass General Brigham and really across New England. And where the field is going, let me make it real for you right now. So what's incredible for me in my academic area of interest is drug development. So I do experimental therapeutics, particularly in pancreatic cancer. And there's a set of drugs that will likely get approved this coming year for pancreatic cancer. We finally feel we have a targeted set of drugs that are being developed. And a success in my field means that you live 6 to 12 months longer than you were otherwise meant to live. The vast majority of people who get pancreatic cancer, for instance, get it when it's surgically unresectable. That means it's metastatic or locally advanced and there's no chance for cure. So a success, and all the money we're spending on NIH funding, on the VC community, pharmaceutical industry, it's to get somebody 6 to 12 months initially of living longer than you otherwise were meant to live. The impact of early detection is that if we pick up your cancer when it's localized, you got a 50-50 shot now of being cured. If we pick it up because you were in a car accident and it was just a little 5 millimeter little ditzel in the pancreas, chances are you have a 60, 80, maybe 90% chance of being cured. And that's what early detection is. It's basically looking at the bloodstream for little markers of cancer that we can pick up before you know you have it. So let me make it real. Everybody in this room, or the majority of people in this room, are probably within 5 years of my age, which means that you have a 2% annual risk of getting a really serious cancer this year. You probably had that cancer for 5 years. Let me make it more real. That means in the next 5 years, you have a 1 in 10 chance of meeting me or one of my guys, one of my folks, right over there, right over my left shoulder. What if we could pick up that right now, image it, cut it out, or ablate it, and you never meet me, and you go on to make it, I'm turning the big 6-0 this year. You go on, I go on to make it to 80, multiple graduations, multiple grandkids, multiple weddings. Like, it makes a difference. It makes an enormous difference. So, where's the research going? Number one, what's great about GRAD? It's starting to do it. We got our foot in the door. What's bad about GRAD? Well, it doesn't pick up as much as we would like. Maybe gets a quarter. Has false positives. We all know what false positives mean. If you're a woman, you're getting your mammograms, chances are you're going to get a biopsy one of these days because there's false positives, false readings. If you're a man, you're getting your PSA and it goes up a little bit, chances are it's just a big prostate. Chances are it's not prostate cancer, but you know what that phone call is like when you get it and the doc is like, hey, Jim, your PSA is a little high, or hey, Mary, there's something on the mammogram, right? That's the problem with the test right now, is the false positive rate is somewhere between 0.5% and 1%. So the research is about 3 things. Number one, it's about getting the test better. The technology of picking up the DNA, picking up the changes around the DNA, picking up the proteomics. Pay attention to proteomics. It's gone from analog to digital in the last 5 years. So we, our scientists, are focused in the lab on making these tests better. 2, the false positive rate is a statistical thing. What if we were able to tell you that your risk wasn't, so your risk right now of getting pancreatic cancer, anybody, in your lifetime, it's about 1.5%. What if we were able to tell you your risk was 50-fold, was 50, 60, 70%? All of a sudden the test becomes that much more accurate. What's going to do that? Machine learning. So all of our math guys, all of our folks doing machine learning and AI research on the millions of data sets that is in our EPIC database, in our imaging, in our pathology, the gajillion of bytes. That's going to be able one day for your primary care clinician, your nurse practitioner, your doc, you're sitting there at age 50 and all of a sudden up pops an alert. You have a 50-fold increased risk of pancreas this year, or ovarian cancer this year, or right-sided colon cancer this year. Those things that we don't have screening tests for, that's the power of AI. That's what our guys are focused on. And 3, okay, we get it. We get the positive test. Then you need to scan to find it. Remember, these are called liquid biopsies. We're putting the biopsy before our ability to find it. Now we got to go find it, because why? We got to cut it out, or we got to ablate it, or we got to do something about it. And that's the trick with Alzheimer's, that's the trick with MS, that's the trick with all the neurologic diseases. It's also the trick with cancer. So that's where the research is going.
It's incredible. It's just amazing. And I think the power of AI, I mean, everyone's talking about this, but from a healthcare landscape, this is why it's so important Congress gets this right? We've got, because it's going to help. I think there's concern that maybe it takes the doctor out of the equation or these health professionals, but it's actually making you guys do your job better and giving you tools that you didn't yet have, with you guys overarching and seeing and managing this whole process. I'm going to go take a minute.
Well, we need consistent legislation.
Yeah.
right, that allows these tests to be funded. But I'll give you a circular thing that's happening today where we need legislation, and I think we can lead the country in Massachusetts, and hopefully the feds pick up on it. I can't tell you, if you get a positive test result, depending upon your insurance, and then we have to go hunting for where is that cancer, that PET scan may not be paid for. And then the insurance company calls me and says, well, it's been denied. And my nurse practitioner says, well, the test was positive, we got to find it. But that PET scan isn't indicated until you have a positive biopsy. And we go, well, that's what we're trying to figure out, but we want to know what the biopsy. Then it gets bounced to me, and then I have to talk to the medical director of the insurance company, and we're just caught in this circular argument. And the legislation hasn't caught up to that circular argument yet, and now the patient gets a bill for 15 grand for that PET scan. And so, like, that's not fair. And so that's the kind of legislation that we need to support.
Yeah, really, it's really incredible. I think everyone here is just kind of locked in on everything you're saying and what we're learning here. I want to shift to Felicia Hologic. Why don't you take a minute and really introduce Hologic, because I feel like people don't necessarily fully understand this women-focused company on medical innovation. You know, can you talk a little bit about some of your focus areas, where you guys are in advanced imaging, some of the things you're known for, especially in cervical cancer screening, things like that?
So most people know Hologic as a women's health company, and if you've ever had a mammogram, you stared Hologic in the face. I know I do, and it's like, okay, this is where I work. But Hologic invented the 3D mammography machine, but I like to take a step back and say I apologize for being tardy. DCA was not kind to me today, so I landed and made a beeline here, and thank God for the taxi driver. Their taxi drivers in Boston are amazing, so got here in record time. But Hologic has been around for 40 years now, and primarily a women's health company, and we're dedicated to treating a woman within their lifespan. So if you've ever had a PET scan, you have seen Hologic's technology, but also the mammography machines. And many of our technology is already using AI, already using algorithm-based technology to detect and treat early stages of cancer, and in particular in the cervical cancer space. In the last 25 years, we have in many ways dominated that space with our thin prep technology and our HPV testing. We believe in co-testing as the gold standard for determining if a person has cervical cancer. But in the last 2 years, with the launch of our Genius detection system, which uses AI and cytology, we're able to really get the clinician to hone in on areas of precancers and cancer cells to truly determine what a patient is at risk for when it comes to HPV, and looking at those various high-risk strains of HPV. We performed about 1 million tests using this technology, and it's like the wave of the future. But thinking about all the things that the panelists have said, innovation is skyrocketing, but Congress and the administration is lagging behind. And I know that from working at Grail for a couple of years on some of the multi-cancer early detection tests, we need to figure out a way, how do we get innovation and policy to align? And I think with Hologic having already utilized some of those AI technologies and building those algorithms, we're able to go to Congress and say, this work is already being done. How can we innovate at CMS? How can we innovate at the FDA to ensure that the innovation investments are, returning in a way that's fruitful not only for companies that are in the space, but also for the patients having access.
It's truly, prior to at NHLS, I was working for an innovative ultrasound company that basically put ultrasound on a semiconductor chip and leverages artificial intelligence, so you don't have to be a sonographer to take that medical grade image. And imagine what that does when you can diagnose somebody at the bedside and work through that and what that captures. And so this whole trend in sort of diagnostic imaging and what that leads to, so important not only in the primary care, but even, in the surgical suite. Wow, we have about 15 minutes. I think this is probably going to ignite and incite a lot of questions, so I want to give a moment to the audience here. Anything that comes up on legislation that we're looking at or specific questions for the panelists.
Hi, I'm Jim Conley, Boston University School of Medicine. So I think the panel has done a great job of showcasing how patients that actually interact with the healthcare industry, those that interact with the industry can do well when they get their tests and when they don't. But I'm curious about patient adherence and actually seeking healthcare. An eye-opening experience for me was in my first rotation. I was trying to work with patients that had positive diagnoses for breast cancer and prostate cancer, and they wouldn't show up for their appointments for biopsies. So I'm curious from a public policy perspective, outreach perspective, how do we improve the culture around this type of thing? And not only just to improve quality of life for patients, but also as a source of economic growth for the healthcare industry in Boston and around.
I'm happy to jump in, but invite my colleagues on the panel to as well. I mean, it's a huge issue, right? And I think some of it goes back to the stigma point that I raised earlier too, right? About people, it's scary when you get news like that, and there's a lack of awareness about, okay, what are my options going forward? And I had a conversation with somebody before the discussion started about how much education we still need to do to make sure that people know what improvements have been made. And I'm thinking specific to Alzheimer's, right? But that having that positive diagnosis doesn't mean you're in the nursing home tomorrow. And how do we help people understand what we have learned today? I mean, Lilly and others actually are studying right now are these disease-modifying therapies in people who have the pathology but don't yet have symptoms. And right, that can be, if those pan out, that could be game-changing, right? If we can actually prevent the onset of symptoms by identifying these people earlier. So I think it's outreach from folks like the Alzheimer's Association. I know you guys are doing tons of work to educate and make sure we're reaching those patients, but it's a perennial challenge, and I'm really glad you raised it, because we need to keep thinking about how do we reach people in rural, underserved communities. But it's certainly something we're thinking about at Lilly a lot too.
So can I just add to that part of the conversation? And while I can't necessarily speak to having someone show up for that next test in that way, I can speak to what we've done with the life insurance that I spoke about at the beginning, and it is rooted in behavioral science of helping to change the behavior that we want to encourage. So an example of that is we will reward someone and give them points when they go for a screening. And they'll get points for that, and those points equate to a status, and that status allows them to save money on their life insurance premium. And people can save up to 25%. Those are big dollars back in pocket. Or if somebody buys fruits and vegetables at the grocery store and not the processed food, or the ultra-processed food, we'll pay for it. We're gonna give you $600 a year towards that. So the behavioral science that you can put in for, is there a reward? Is there something for me? We may be sitting here thinking, gosh, isn't knowing and taking that next step enough of a reward? Sometimes that's not enough to get someone to take that behavior change. And so what I would have us start to think about is, how can we take that, we want to incentivize you, we want to lead with carrots, not chase you with a stick, to get you to take that next action. And so that's what we've applied to life insurance, and we've seen a tremendous change in the health of our customers as compared to Americans.
I'll just add also that, part of the issue is access to the healthcare providers, right? So if you can get an initial screening that pops up something positive that you need to then have a biopsy, but you were able to have that first visit at your local physician or local hospital, but now you have to travel to a different hospital or a different healthcare provider that may be far from your home, right? That there's, just logistical challenges, right, that patients face. So I'm really excited about new diagnostics that are coming that will enable people to stay closer to home and yet still receive the care, right? So, partnerships that, places like MDH have with other organizations to provide that, or new tests, right? Instead of having to have a a PET scan, right, that might be really hard to get, maybe that liquid biopsy actually performs just as well as that PET scan, and maybe we'll be able to use different method to hone in on precisely where that is, that might not require somebody to travel a great distance to get those. So I'm really excited about those types of opportunities to maybe help with some of those barriers.
Yeah, there's an equity angle to this in a big way, and I think, when you think about the screening tests that we have, for instance, pap smear, colonoscopy, prostate exam, nobody wants to do that, right? And they're invasive, and there's cultural stigma associated with that. And this allows us, and it's often associated with educational status, in terms of people's and populations accessing those screening tests. These are game changers in terms of democratizing screening to the entire, to our entire culture, and that's the power of it. And when we combine this democratizing ability with implementation science, like we're doing here in Boston, it has a chance to wipe out a lot of the equity differences we see in screening of standard screening tests today.
One more question.
Hi, Scott Hart from Dana Farmer. I was reading about the Grail test that had a major failure in its study, and I wanted to find out what does that mean to you and your organization?
So I can start. I think that it was obviously interesting to see the news that had come out on the NHS study. I believe that's the one that you're referring to. We have, continued to have our conversations with Grail and continue to have our partnership. We look forward to the full study coming out. I believe it's middle of May at a conference that they're going to be, Conference of Oncology, that they're going to be rolling out the full study, and we'll find out a lot more. From our perspective, we are focused on continuing to offer access to the Grail Gallery test, as well as any other screenings that become available. As I said, the Perduvo full body MRI, things around cardiac. So we're continuing to say, this is something that is available to you. We don't promote it. We don't say this is something you should do. We don't take any of those actions. But we do feel as though the continued education, the continued focus on that early detection is important. And I think it will be interesting to see when that full study comes out to say what were the pluses, what were the minuses, and how do we take those into account to where does Grail go next. So there hasn't been a change from our perspective.
I think I'd love to make a comment on the failure aspect, but what it failed at in the report was meeting the statistical measures that they had hoped to achieve. So we're awaiting the full report, but I want to caution everybody because Grail is like the iPhone version 1. I was cleaning out our house recently, and I was throwing stuff away, and I almost didn't recognize the iPhone version 1. And that was 2007, 8, something like that. So 20 years. So in the next 20 years, the innovation that I talked about on the molecular profiling, on the proteomics, is going to revolutionize. So the criticism, we'll see if it's going to be fair or not on the test, but my guess, and it's just a guess, it's speculation, is that they set statistics as though they were iPhone version 5 when they're iPhone version 1. And had they been a little bit more modest in what they were hoping to achieve, remember, it took years for mammography to get approved as a screening tool because its success rate in picking up early cancers that actually translated into lives saved took years to prove.
Can I comment on that? Oh, yeah. Also, just thinking about what the panelists just said about early detection, that's key. And making sure people have access to these tests and these new innovations that come out. Granted, the study is coming out and the reading will be more wholesome later on this year. But just thinking about some of the policy measures that have taken place, as a result of companies coming onto the market with innovation. The multi-cancer early detection bill passed and became law earlier this year, and that's because Congress is recognizing that innovation is moving forward, and we need to ensure that there are reimbursement pathways for these technologies, and also so that Medicare patients and other patients have access to these tests when they do get on market. So I agree with Dr. Ryan that we're looking at probably the iPhone version 1, but think about the individual who may never would have had access to that if the policy had not changed. We would still be waiting probably 10 to 15 years for CMS to catch up to Grail technology or any other technology that Hologic may invent or other innovators may have. And I just wanted to comment on this gentleman's question here. I think we have to bring more educators into communities and meet people where they are. A lot of people have a healthy fear of screening, have a healthy fear, and really want to know what is out there. We can't come in saying, well, I know what's best for you. We have to learn what's best for the patient and how we can work within their environments to ensure that they have access to these.
Can I just add one more thing about the grant? As somebody who's, trained methodologist, and I'm all about the evidence and a trained scientist, right? I think a lot of, I think about the multi-cancer early detection tests are a lot like where pharma was years ago in terms of drug treatment, right? If you had, if we're looking 30, 40, 50 years back, right? If you had breast cancer, this is the treatment that you would have. Everybody who had breast cancer got that exact same treatment, right? And now we know that certain drugs work better in certain patients. And I wonder if, and I think that diagnostics for things like multi-cancer early detection are kind of the same way, right? Like we're all really wanting Grail to do everything, right? We want it to pick up all of the cancers. Maybe the Grail technology, maybe this study will bear out that it's really good, really good at picking up maybe 10 different kinds of cancers that we didn't have a good test for earlier. And maybe a different company will innovate and come up with a different technology to fill some of those gaps that maybe Grail will, hypothetically, right, maybe doesn't meet the bar evidence-wise right now. I think there's just a lot of innovation, and I just want to also be a little bit cautious that, we're still a little bit early days, right? And so even though we've moved so far with this technology that, I think there's a lot of room to grow. I'm really excited to see what does happen. What are the full study results? And, maybe there are other tests that will also come to market that will do, just as good of a job or maybe focus on different cancer types.
Well, with that, I think we have to wrap. I had a comment here on, what additional opportunities we see for collaboration, and I think that just directs us into really giving a big thank you to the New England Council for bringing this group together. As you can see, it really takes a village to bring this innovation to the patient, and I think it's a testament to the quality of New England Council's membership, the ability to have this conversation with private sector innovators, with research, with the life insurance side on how we're bringing all of this together. So I want to thank the New England Council, and if nothing else, feel empowered today. Talk to your family members about what's out there and be educated on your healthcare. Thank you guys.